You're watching the Eternal Tournament Series.
Hello, and welcome to the sixth and final round of Week 1 here at Season 4 of the Eternal Tournament Series. I am Truedawn, joined, as always, by my wonderful co-host, LocoPojo.
Yeah, we have a Feln Tempo deck versus a Feln Aggro deck today. Linyvine versus ManuS. We do not have ManuS's broadcast here, so we're going to be watching from Linyvine's perspective. And yeah, it looks like it's going to be a really, really aggressive bash fest.
Yeah, and these decks are functionally the same thing. Manu elected to call his deck Feln Tempo, Linyvine, Feln Aggro, they're the same deck. Largely doing the same thing. I'm trying to scope out any tech choices that may be different. And there is, in Linyvine, he's electing to go up to Impending Doom, actually playing 4 drops, something Manu has decided to not do. But outside of that, these are exactly the same deck.
Yeah. Mirror image decks can be really interesting skill matchups. They can also be heavily based on like a little bit of luck. So we're going to see which of those ends up being the case and hop into a game with the two of them. I think that overall it's going to be fairly dependent on those Impending Dooms are going to be an interesting decision here. They are a card that allows you to push a lot of extra damage, but also they deal that extra damage to you. So if you get into situations where those Impending Dooms get permafrosted, that's sort of the worst of both worlds for you.
Yeah, and this matchup should be very interactive on both sides. Both players have a lot of interaction, a lot of cheap interaction. The board states are going to involve pretty complex combat. So this will be a very skill texting a mirror match, or at least I expect.
Yeah, there are several instigators in both players' decks, along with a hefty amount of removal. With all of the damage they're dealing into each other, I think I'm rooting for a scenario where somebody gets, where both of them get super low, and we end up with an instigator tie type situation where just one person wins based on like who has the most health. We'll see exactly what ends up happening, but I'm hoping it gets that close.
Yeah, that would certainly be cool to see. There are also differences in the sideboard, which we can get into after game 1. But main deck, it's only the Impending Dooms are the only different card.
There's some minor differences upon either side. We have Whispering Winds in both decks. We have Beast Caller's Amulets in both decks. One of them is running 3, one of them is running 2. So like ManuS is running the Beast Caller's Amulet over the Impending Doom, but yeah, these are very comparable lists. 4 sabotages in both of them. I'm actually a little surprised by that. I think that's a not usually what I would consider an aggro card, but I think it must be fairly popular in the Feln aggro archetype.
It's pretty standard because you are so reliant on your particular threats living. You need to take away their interaction, so sabotage helps do that, or at least that is the plan. And we see as we move here into the game, Linyvine only has an Argent Port Instigator, which if he's able to untap, he can protect with this backlash, but it can't really attack into the opposing Argent Port Instigator. You really don't want to leave yourself with 0 creatures. Like most of the cards in these decks are assuming that you have a creature. And I guess Linyvine is just hoping that Manu doesn't block, and Manu does not block. So he kind of got to cheat there. And again, that's like the play of this matchup. It matters a lot.
Oh, getting a little bit of free damage in here. He can double Vara's the Twilight Raptor to gain a little bit of health back and sort of put himself in a position where he's almost winning on tempo. And that might be the play here. It's nice to have backlash up, to be sure. Oh man, it actually hurts quite a bit if ManuS manages to backlash the second Vara's favor, because it means the first one was wasted.
It wouldn't be the biggest deal in the world just because Vara's favors are just like so low impact, they replace themselves. It's like not a big deal, but yeah, it would have kept the 2-2 in play. The race is still in the favor of Manu, but now the race has swung to Linyvine, although the Cabal Countess has something to say about that.
Yeah, just going to answer that right back. So we have guns a-blazing on either side. Argent Port Instigators are hastening the speed of these aggro decks as they hurtle towards each other. So we have that 4-1, of course, that's going to be really, really frightening for Linyvine, but anything that he can play out here to sort of could be very, very solid.
And this is interesting, at what point with your Linyvine do you try and pump the brakes and live? Is that a viable option, this mirror? Because he's certainly behind the race, and the second Cabal count, this is a big problem. But
Yeah, second Cabal Countess is probably a little bit too much for him to deal with. He can block the Argenport Instigator, and that will push a little bit of extra damage onto ManuS while keeping him alive, but there's always a chance of a rapid shot.
It looks like Manu does have a rapid shot. And does he have a second one? He does, so that will be lethal damage.
Yeah, that's a significant amount of extra damage there. So, pretty fast game, very, very quickly resolved, and we're going to go ahead and go into the next one.
Yep, and now we have to check out some of the sideboard differences. We'll see on the side of Manu that he has 2 Dark Return, 2 Suffocate, 2 Backlash, 3 Plague, 3 Recurring Nightmare, 1 Death Strike, 1 Lethrai Falchion, and 1 Stir the Pest. I have to imagine that Lethrai Falchion is really good in this matchup. It's just about the damage race. If you're even able to just get 1 hit in with it, it'll probably swing enough to decide the game. Backlash is a reasonable way to interact with your opponent's pump spells and interaction. It's a very tempo-oriented matchup. I could see that being reasonable.
In the meantime, Linyvine has a lot more straightforward answers. 2 Suffocates, 4 Lightning Strikes. There's a pair of Backlashes and 3 more Waykeepers in the deck, as well as a Countess, a Death Strike, and 2 Stewards of the Past. I think those Lightning Strikes and Suffocates are going to be especially good here, and the Lightning Strikes are just a very, very solid answer to all of the threats that ManuS can present in his deck.
Yeah, definitely. I think that we would likely see the Lightning Strikes, Suffocates, just all the cheap stuff. You just want to be able to interact cheaply in this matchup. And anything you're expending like 3 or 4 mana for needs to be incredibly high impact.
Those Lightning Strikes are especially good at picking up Cabal Countesses and Midnight Gales, both of which are pretty serious threats. And they're especially nice because they allow Linyvine to get some actual card advantage and get himself like a little bit more of a tempo reach against the Beast Colors Amulet, which might just, even the threat of them might make ManuS think twice about playing that card.
Yeah, it's really hard in this matchup to just like leave flyers in play or just like leave a creature unblocked, because if they have the Beast Colors Amulet, it's just a huge blowout. But we'll see how each player chooses to deal with those situations. Yeah, this is I think it's a pretty like straightforward matchup for sideboarding. It'd be interesting to see if Manu elects to bring in the Recurring Nightmares. I'd imagine not, just because they're very mana intensive. It's kind of counter to what this deck's trying to do. I would assume that those are for more controlling matchups.
They're especially slow, too, which is not really what you want against the more aggressive style. I think the Lethrai Falchions are pretty likely to come in. Unfortunately, the Plagues aren't super useful here. They hit Cabal Countess, but that's about the only card that they really meaningfully affect. So
they do make all of your opponent's flyers like smaller than your flyers. So like, I don't think it's unreasonable, but you're signing something out. I don't think anything is like worse than Plague. So I could see it in the application possibly.
I think the Suffocates are going to be rolling in for both players. The Dark Returns may end up in on ManuS' side, as well as the Lethrai Falchion. The rest of it probably ends up just being a little bit too slow. ManuS does not have a single card above 3, so we will see exactly how far.
Let me see Manu getting off to a fast start here, but Linyvine be able to answer back with the Annihilated. If he didn't have that, he might get run over. Unfortunately, Linyvine's the way their mana has worked out, they're not going to be able to play this Midnight Gale next turn. They can only play the Raptor plus Sabotage, which will threaten to trade with one of these. So
pretty unfortunately. The Sabotage would be really nice if it hit something, but as it is, Linyvine's going to be behind because of that Sabotage.
Yeah, he'll be likely content to trade here because he's so far behind. He just needs to try and live, and we do see the trade happen. He's going to need this Midnight Gale to do a lot of heavy lifting. If it dies, the House of Cards comes crumbling down.
On the other hand, he's pretty much guaranteed to keep the Midnight Gale alive because there isn't a spell in ManuS' hand, and he has that information, so he gets to play around with it. Unfortunately,
the top tech Firmfrost. So yeah, that's pretty good for Manu. And Argenport Instigator at least threatens to trade with the opposing Argenport Instigator. If Manu doesn't have anything, that will be good. But Manu has missed power drops, which likely means he just has business in hand. So a rapid shot is a little bit backbreaking. You still need to throw the block, though.
You have to throw the block in front of the rapid shots. This doubles up some damage, puts ManuS in a worse position. But Blood Beetle's here. It's possible that ManuS is sitting on like some Cobalt Acolytes or something that he wants to hold on to. It's hard to say what could be in his hand that he wouldn't be playing out right now, but as far as things go.
Not blocking the 1/2
I
is like if they have rapid shot, good beats, but like now you have a second 2/2 that you currently don't have an answer to. Like at least your Whispering Wind was checking the 1/2 before, and now you like essentially created another threat for Manu by being passive.
Got to draw your own suffocates now. All right, so Linyvine gets to discard power and pick up something better. The Midnight Gale is particularly strong.
Likely the best thing that he could have gotten off the Whispering Wind. At least threatens to block all of this stuff in the air, although he is currently dead to a rapid shot, which is why I liked the block before, because it's just going to be a lethal rapid shot next turn.
He's threatening backlash here as opposed to playing the Blood Beetle after tempo. That's not the most efficient play, but it does make it a little bit harder for ManuS to do his job.
I mean, the Blood Beetle's gonna... I think he just wants to cycle the Blood Beetle. The Blood Beetle's not relevant anymore. He'd rather it be a different card from Whispering Wind. I assume that's the thinking here.
Yeah, it seems fairly reasonable. If Linyvine draws a card that he wants along with another card off of the Blood Beetle, that certainly could help him out quite a bit here. He's up to 5 power, so he can hit Cobalt Monuments. Sometimes those cards are not actually in your deck, so you can't actually get them off Whispering Wind until you have activated them. But from here, we see ManuS discarding one of his Cobalt Monuments. The Linyvine has to decide whether or not he wants to block the Whispering Wind, which provides ManuS with all that extra just card advantage, or the Blood Beetle, which unfortunately opens him up to that Varus favor.
Yeah, I think I actually would have blocked the Whispering Wind because the rapid shot is lethal either way, and we do see what happens, unfortunately. Rapid shot is not what you want here, and this is one of the problems with this deck, is once it gets behind, a lot of its cards don't really function from that position. And you see rapid shot being one of the chief examples of that, where it just really doesn't do anything at this position.
It's nothing, which is actually fairly surprising. It must mean that he has a sizable amount of units that he can actually play in his deck. Whispering Wind here with Rapid Shot gives him some options. Blood Beetle is also a decent attack. He can discard the Varus favor and get something back, but it's going to be pretty hard to recover.
I have no idea. I don't think that there's really any draw that Linyvine might have. I can't imagine Manu blocks. There's no reason to do so. And we will see the concession from Linyvine, and Manu will win the game 2-0.
Yeah.
Very interesting matchup. Well played by both players. Linyvine was just unfortunately on back foot for all the games. They had like pretty power heavy draws, and like we said, this deck is really not equipped to fight from behind. So whoever gets ahead in the beginning is just very favored to stay there.
ManuS with the slightly more aggressive archetype, like no 4-drops, just a really minor change, and then just ended up having a lot better hands, getting a lot better tempo going on. So Linyvine was always on the back foot and ended knocked completely out of that. So it's pretty likely we're going to see ManuS in the quarterfinals.
Yep, that was his winning in.
That was his winning in. Linyvine has to win one more, and if he manages it, or wait, is this round 6? This is round 6,
yes.
So Linyvine has a chance, but it's going to be based on win percentage. So yeah,
he has to hope the tiebreakers go his way. So we will be seeing at least one Fountain Tempo deck in the top 8. A deck that is pretty new to the scene, having success in the hands of Manu, one of the better players in the scene, someone who's constantly producing content, doing well in tournaments. So
yeah, it's a fun, aggressive deck. It's certainly nice and straightforward and simple. So we'll see how well it does in the quarterfinals.
Yep, and we do have a backup match lined up for you guys. Be coming up soon, where we have Hythar on Big Combre versus SirRhino on Combre aggro. We did see SirRhino's deck and Hythar's as well in earlier rounds. SirRhino's deck is much more aggressive, doesn't have a lot of the top end cards you normally associate with the Big Combre. And we will join this game in progress as we see a harsh rule coming down from Hythar, swiping up SirRhino's board. And SirRhino is unfortunately on air.
Yeah, looking at a whole lot of nothing with a finest hour to buff it. From here, we've got Sandstorm Titan on Hythar's side. Xenon Obelisk is actually a good pickup for SirRhino here, even though it doesn't look it. Basically, anything that he plays next should be a little bit tougher and a little bit more capable of dealing with the Sandstorm Titan. But he's far, far behind on cards, which is not good in the Combre versus Combre matchup.
Yeah, and now Hythar just has to extend out. As we saw in previous rounds, SirRhino's deck doesn't really have the tools to fight back from behind, so I'm not really sure what they can draw here in this position to really do anything, especially considering they're taking give or take 1 million this turn.
Yeah, this is almost lethal just straight off the bat. You could Finest Hour and actually secure it if you had Finest Hour, but I'm guessing this deck actually has Harsh Rules, which is something that Sirlis is really wanting right now, and unfortunately does not have in his deck. So from here we see Sandstorm Titan. That'll be the game, and we'll be moving into Game 3, I believe.
Nope, the Hythar was actually up 1-0, so Hythar wins the match and moves up.
Well, bonked right on the head then. Okay, so fast round, unfortunately, but we saw the Cambrai win out there in overall just wonderfulness, and Sirlis just ends up getting a little bit flooded out.
Yeah, definitely. And let's take yeah, that was an interesting game to see that they just get the Cambrai aggro deck not being able to get over the top of stuff. It really needs to get the aggression going early, or it's just going to flounder. It doesn't really have the tools to fight back from behind. So
it can be pretty difficult, especially if you are running low on cards. We saw like a very few cards from Sirlis there in the first round, and just ended up being like just being a bit of a problem with just too many things that he had to deal with. There's no way to stabilize that board and get himself into like the sort of middle range. So the Cambrai aggro was not successful in getting.
All right. And I would like to take a moment while we have it to talk about aReNGeeternal.com. This tournament would not be able to happen without aReNGeeternal.com. You can go there to read daily articles written by a group of influential and skilled players like co-host LocoPojo's Science School, which is a recurring article focusing on beginners. So you can check that article out and others at aReNGeeternal.com.
You'll like it. It's on draft today, so if you're interested, go ahead and check it out. It's good stuff.
Yep. You can find a bunch of resources, tournament information. There's draft primers, constructed articles, any content you're looking for competitive Eternal. You are likely to find it on aReNGeeternal.com.
Yeah, I certainly go there pretty much all the time. So, but I guess that's not necessarily the best way to manage, because I obviously go there to write. So yes, but there's a lot of good content there, daily stuff, and a lot of it's been very helpful in basically establishing how I play, as well as basically helping out lots of new people. So I think that it's a really good resource, and definitely go check it out.
And I do believe we have backup match trying to get set up between SirRhino and Telendor. But we
haven't had a Rhino highlight yet. Let's hope we can get it there, but no guarantees, folks. We're still trying to connect in.
Yeah, it appears to not be loading, unfortunately. So we'll see if we can get that taken care of. But it looks like Rhino is on Feln control, as has become customary. He is a person who has played that deck in pretty much every tournament. He's played Feln aggro once, switched it up, but
yeah, I think this is a Feln aggro deck, or at least that's what it says. I could be wrong. I don't have the deck list in front of me.
It was mislabeled. He's on control, apparently.
Okay. Yeah, that control archetype style is really, really solid. You got those Feln Bloodcasters to pull the top card of your opponent's deck off. That can always be fun against War Cries and the like. But it's also just a really good value card for both slowing down the aggro decks and giving you bunch of card advantage. I'm a big fan of the archetype. I think it's a very strong tournament archetype, and I'm glad that Rhino's always playing it.
Yeah, it's cool to see someone devote to the deck and just try to make it better, just to have their pet deck tune in every tournament, try and keep doing well with it, and see Rhino has a lot of success with it.
Yeah. Looks like we might have actually loaded into it. We are seeing Carielus Gruin is the name of the deck, which is a pretty delightful name, I think. Just sort of a gag on the sort of like straightforward names that people run, where it's like, this is this particular deck with this particular unit inside it. This is a Carielus Gruin.
Yep, you do get to
Gruin in it.
You do get to see his current deck list here with the Vara, Black Scavenger. Snow Crush Animus is interesting. Card usually don't see unless it's in a reanimator deck, not usually a good fair card, but you're getting update mana anyway. It's certainly going to be a powerful card to play on a variety of different boards. It's going to sweep up a lot of stuff usually.
I'm a big fan of Animist. It is both a crystallize on a stick and also a way to clear out a bunch of the smaller units that can often plague you in the token matchups. It's a good way to answer Shimmer Pack in particular, which is something that you are going to see a lot of in tournaments. So I think it's a very solid choice. You do have to sacrifice your Vara slots for it, so you have to get that overall amount of extra value. But it looks like this is probably just going to go just fine for him. And I think Snow Crush Animist is a lot more proactive than Vara for pushing the board and getting some damage across in the late game situation.
Yeah, definitely. Vara is just a really powerful tool in the late game to just grind people out. I've had a lot of success with it in Reanimator. That's where I've been playing around with it a lot. Bring back things like Voprex is actually pretty powerful. But even in this deck, like getting Champion of Cunning, there's just such a hard card to beat. Like, even if they can beat it once, getting to be able to get it back, it's just unlikely to beat it again. You have multiple copies, so just a way to turn the corner. I found that the Felon Control deck doesn't really have the late game where you can just kind of like answer all this stuff, do nothing, and then win with something. You really need to like be a bit proactive, and Champion of Cunning is the perfect card for that.
Yep, can be very effective here. Looks like we're about to go into a game, or like we're getting close to that invite. Rhino's deck is running the Champion of Cunning, which is just a really solid deck for setting up like a lot of aggression out of your more placed down on the board over time. Felon has a lot of units that will be played for a particular summon effect and then just sort of get left awkwardly out on the board. So Champion's really great for buffing those guys up.
Yeah, we do see we are moving into the game, so we should be doing that shortly. And this is game 3. Players are 1-1. And his opponent is on Big Combre.
This one's for
classic matchup.
Yeah, we've got Vara's favor to set up a 5th power, so Rhino's going to be able to make it all the way up to Black Sky Harbinger without a lot of difficulty. It's mostly what he finds along the way that's going to determine the shape of this game. Telendor, what is Telendor playing?
It's on Big Combre currently, and
Big Combre.
I assume it's a relatively stock list.
Yeah, so we'll see Mystic Ascendance and other exceptionally big cards in the late game, but it's the early game that Rhino really has to worry about because there are a lot of big beaters in the Seraph and Sandstorm Titans that can be pretty tough to deal with, and if you don't get rid of all of them, if you don't match up answers to the threats that Combre is playing, then you can get run over pretty quick.
Yeah. If it is normal Big Combre, though, Rhino's hand's actually pretty good. They're not going to provide so much pressure that it can really punish a draw this slow. Steward of the Past should come down soon enough to blow whatever. The Bloodcaster is certainly good. So I think Rhino's in pretty good shape. This is as good a draw as you could reasonably ask for.
Yep, he has most of the answers. He's saving the Vara's favor. There's only a couple of targets for Vara's favor, and that's one of them, that Temple Scribe right there. Looking at a really fancy Vara the Fate Touched as well. So looks like this deck is going to be moving along.
Yeah, look at all those fancy premium cards. Makes me regret crafting like Caleb's and Voprexes to brew random decks than just nice shiny Varas.
Yeah, I just craft all of my But it looks like an attack with Felon Bloodcaster here, trying to force the block from the 3/3. This is a pretty clever use of the Bloodcaster, like cute little aggro, and then he can play the Steward of the Past if he doesn't get blocked.
Yeah, so it's a pretty big red flag that they have Vara's favor, so like there's no way you block there, but it's a good pulse check. Want to make sure your opponent's paying attention.
Have done it without a Vara's favor and just snuck 2 damage across the field.
It's usually correct to do stuff like that because you like they can't even risk the block because if you have it, it's a huge blowout. So like in a lot of spots like that, you can just kind of free roll attack.
Yep, there's always the problem of like maybe they have like a finest hour or a stand together or something like that. But I think in this situation, it was totally justified. So Rhino's in a bit of an awkward position here because he did save that Vara's favor. So in order to get to his 6th power, which he does definitely want to do, he's going to have to play a little bit awkwardly here and Vara's favor the Temple Scribe in order to play down another Bloodcaster. But this opens him up in some other ways that aren't great. Like he can now get harsh ruled, and that's a lot of card advantage lost in the form of those Bloodcasters, which will never go off. So it's going to be tricky for him.
Yeah, balancing how much you want to extend out into Big Combre's harsh rules is always an interesting balance playing the Felon deck. Because normally, like, harsh rules shouldn't be good against you. You've like don't have a lot of creatures. They all usually get some kind of value, so you don't want to overextend into that and make their harsh rules good when you don't need to. So I would be surprised if Rhino plays out much more than he currently has.
Yeah. Looks like he's got a lot of decent aggression here. The Steward of the Past is a decent blocker, but I think Telendor is questioning whether or not he wants to silence it. Seems like since he doesn't have the ability to make a 5/5 right now, he may not want to play more into this board. He might want to try and keep it a little bit simple and then set up for a harsh rule. Or he might want to actually play a lot out and try and get that 4/4 across for damage. It's really dependent on what he thinks Rhino has in his hand.
Yeah, definitely. And it really depends upon how, like, against Felm Control, you could usually extend out pretty safely. They do have Witch Storm, but that's it. And it's really hard to cobble together, or at least much harder to cobble together 2 cards than it is to just have Harsh Rule. So you could usually be a little bit more liberal with how far you extend out. And because Telendor has like extended out a lot, SirRhino is more comfortable extending out because Telendor loses just as much as Rhino. So he's not really getting blown out by the Harsh Rule.
Yeah, I'm surprised there was no pressure from the Steward of the Past there. Like, there was the potential to get like a Desert Marshal to the face, but that's something that you actually want to see before you Black Sky Harbinger. So from here, we have kind of an awkward setup where he's just sitting on a bunch of 3/5s, and the blocks just don't look great.
Yeah,
He can attack in, use the Death Strike.
Yeah, the Death Strike is good here, but you kind of want to use them on the flyers because you currently don't have an answer to those. So getting chipped down by those isn't great. You still have the Steward of the Past to check the Awakened Students. You don't really care about that. I think you just need to probably tag one of these flyers, and you would likely do it now because Stand Together is currently not an available option.
He could also just try and swing and push a little bit of pressure of his own. He's not doing a lot of pressure going on here, but he is playing just a little bit more than Telendor, and Telendor is in kind of a precarious power position. He does not have that 5th power, so Rhino could potentially try and win this game through aggro. It's a little bit awkward, and it's pretty unlikely to work, but he doesn't have good options here.
Yeah, and worth noting, Rhino only has 3 Shadow Threshold, 3 Primal Threshold, so even if he does draw a Champion of Cunning, neither side is online. Like, if Shadow side was online, it would be pretty good on a board like this, but even that is not a great top deck for Rhino.
Yeah, the longer he holds out, the better off he is. The main thing that he might want to consider here is like attacking with the Steward, just because the Steward trades double, or pushing entirely in. He does go for it.
This is pretty interesting. I think that he's recognized, or at least what this telegraphs to me, is that he's recognized he doesn't want to just sit back on his heels against this 8 power in the air. He wants to at least try to race, so he can, if he doesn't draw an answer to all of the flyers, he's in a position to possibly kill Telendor on the back end.
If he gets a single block here, he does actually have more damage than Telendor. He decides to hold the Death Strike here and just basically sacrifice the Felon Bloodcaster for the damage-based cause. And then he plays another Steward to push yet more damage. So this might actually make Telendor think twice about attacking in with Owls, which is really the thing that Rhino wants. He wants the board to sort of get into a stable position where there's less attacking and less stuff going on, and maybe Telendor is forced to harsh rule his own board.
Yeah, it was a good play by Rhino, recognizing that he was likely not going to be able to beat the 4/4s, and or at least the best way to do that would be to dissuade Telendor from attacking with them. Telendor is not dissuaded; he does jam in for 8, but that is going to come at a cost. Rhino does have a pretty good attack on the back end here.
Yep. Combined with the Permafrost, that's another 6, 8, 11 damage here, which is very threatening. He can force Telendor to harsh rule his own board, which would be very, very good. He's going to run a little bit low on power in the process, but he'll have a Death Strike for one particular card if he chooses to. He could like try and wait for like a Stand Together, or like, if there's a Stand Together, this game is over.
Well, if he has Stand Together to protect the Awakened Student, Rhino gets to Death Strike the Owl, so he's not dead in the air. And it prevents him from attacking this turn, at least with the non-Death Touch creatures, but he's not dead.
Okay,
you see
so
him be
5/5
content to just let that happen, because he really needs to kill the flyers.
5/5 protect happens. He's probably going to sit still here. There's going to be a weird situation where the 2 Owls attack, and then Rhino has to just sort of wait for Stand Together to be played to Death Strike one of the Owls, and thus get the actual Death Strike off. He could also try to push damage in some other ways, but this is just not looking great.
Yeah, he's not really threatening enough with his own attacks to really dissuade Telendor from attacking. He kind of needs to attack because he's not really able to block profitably.
You swing with at least one steward here.
Yeah.
The safe play is to not swing with both of them, because if there is a stand together, then he's also going to be attacking with that awakened student, which will put enough damage over that he can't be double blocked by the silence.
Well, I'm not sure you can play around stand together anymore because if they have it, you're dead. Or if they go for it. So what you could do is let them attack and then not death strike. And if they don't have it, you take 8, go down to 2. Because if you death strike before they stand together, like before damage happens, they stand together and you die. Exactly.
Exactly. So, Rhino will live through this next turn. He's smart enough to know that he can death strike the owls in response to the stand together. But he does have to do something about these owls, and what that is going to be really, really tough to figure out.
Yeah, I think that Rhino just needs to hope that they don't have stand together. He draws a removal spell for the second owl off the top, and he's able to turn the corner. I'm not really seeing other available lines of play.
This option might force a Desert Marshal out, which would allow him to death strike one of the owls. Very, very good for him overall. But it would also leave him without a decent blocker against the ground troops. So he's going to have some issues regardless of what happens.
Yep, we see the attack finally go through. Rhino will pass the turn. See what happens on this attack step.
Telendor at 12. Swinging for 8.
And I think he just has to let it happen, because if you just die to stand together in this way, you don't. Although, again, like, I think that even if you let it happen, okay, so I agree with that. The reason why is if you let the 8 damage happen and then you end step death strike and they have stand together, they just have like 3 Aegis things you can't beat and you're dead anyway. So I think you just have to assume that they don't have stand together.
Yeah, it's also correct to play the stand together at the end of turn if you're Telendor. So Rhino just assumed that Telendor didn't have it and played the death strike out. That seems clever enough. Felon Bloodcaster gets him some card draw here. He's still in a lot of trouble, but the extra cards might be reasonable for him, and he is going to pick up enough to actually get Vara back.
And Titan is a thing.
Titan's real. Titan does most of what he needs Titan to do, but it also probably is going to get answered by a Vanquish.
Yeah, there's certainly a lot that answers it, but it's an answer to a thing that would otherwise be killing him. He does need a lot of help. The Titan's not the end of it, but Titan's step 1, I guess.
Yep, if he plays Titan and there's no Vanquish just right away, then he does live for long enough to start establishing Vara and start establishing some actual damage. He can even push with these Stewards of the Past because of Titan, to take the risk that there's not going to be a Vanquish because you're dead anyways with the Vanquish, and continue to push damage on Telendor and force Telendor to make harder decisions regarding his attacks. 4 damage in. Telendor mapping up the board a little bit. Didn't have the stand together, didn't have any sort of extra trick. So now Rhino has to really hope that that Sandstorm Titan is going to be good enough.
Yeah, he really wants to not see like anything that is going to deal with this Titan. It's probably he still has a draw step. If he draws like an Annihilate or something, his turn gets a lot easier. Impending Doom is also good, although kind of not really.
Kind of awful. Like Impending Doom is a card that if he plays it, he just dies. Like he can't actually take 1 damage here and then take another 1 damage. That Impending Doom is just the worst thing for him right now.
I mean, it gives them another turn if they have Vanquish for Silence. You get another turn, and then you could, if you draw a way to kill your own Impending Doom. So it depends upon how much you're willing to just scoop to Vanquish or a Silence effect. Because as bad as the Impending Doom is, it does buy you another turn if they have Vanquish or Silence.
Like if he pushes enough, if he can push enough damage off Impending Doom and Sandstorm Titan, that he doesn't die to his own Impending Doom. I think he does play the Impending Doom here. I think that's
actually I think that's what this attack telegraphs too. Is this attack puts him in a spot where he gets 1 more turn, and in that 1 more turn, the Titan and the Impending Doom could potentially present lethal.
Yep, like he almost has to play it here. If he picks up a Vara's Favor or a Black Sky Harbinger, there are a lot of cards that can buy him a little bit of time on top of his deck.
Yeah.
But if he doesn't get either of those, and Telendor is able to play down enough units, then the Impending Doom will be the death of Rhino.
Yeah, this is definitely the play, though. I think that this sets him up as best as he possibly can. It's like, yeah, he's going to die to his Impending Doom if he doesn't draw anything, but these are the kind of lines you need to take when you are in as dire straits as Rhino currently is.
So the Vanquish was there. The Impending Doom was 100% correct. But there's a second Vanquish.
Good win.
Doom is averted, and then it comes back in the form of owls. So we are going to go ahead and call that one for 10.
Yep, winning the game 2-1. Good job by him. I believe he moves into top 8. I wasn't sure what the record of both players were, but I assume they're X1. So we will definitely be looking at the bracket when we come back to make sure. A lot of good showings, though, from the Swiss rounds at the Eternal Tournament Series.
Yeah, some really excellent play there. It was a treat to see Rhino's Felden control deck doing okay. A shame that it got knocked out there, but it wasn't a lot. That was a real nail-biter of a last round. I'm pretty glad that we got to see that.
Yep, and we will be coming back shortly with our top 8 playoff. We will show you guys the brackets, see the matchups, show you whichever round we'd like to feature. And all of that is going to be coming in just a couple minutes, so stay tuned. We'll have that for you in just a bit.